Hey, everybody, welcome back to this Think Business exclusive with Maria Mileder. Maria, it is so great to see you. I always love talking to you. I always appreciate your time. You are the global head of innovation at PayPal. And I was looking forward to talking with you because as we are, talking, it's May 2022. And, we are... I think PayPal is a company that everybody looks at, from an innovative standpoint. And as you are kind of pace setters, what is PayPal doing right now, that is innovative when it comes to, I think, a topic that's, I think, very relevant for many companies, back to the office, right? That's a very innovative thing right now, right? But nobody knows really what to do. You have so many employees all over the world. What's PayPal's philosophy?
Yeah, and happy to share it. And thank you so much for having me again,
Yeah.
Jon. Always a pleasure.
Always
and
fun.
By the way, I love that intro. It's just that calm and it's brilliant. And I took the breath as well, because when you think business, you don't necessarily do that often.
Right.
So thank you very much. Well, what does PayPal do think about these things? What I love, I always say that, and this is what kept me at PayPal for that long as well, is the culture is incredible. And it is what carries us around. It pushes us to higher levels as we're asking each other for more at all times. And in specifically coming back to the office, to be honest, I think we're at a voluntary coming back to the office policy at the moment, means that people can figure it out. So come back to the office, check out the often new spaces. People did an amazing job with actually renovating a lot of the spaces, with, trying to understand what future needs might be. Also just give people a bit of an incentive to just explore new spaces and redefine them for themselves and not expect to come back to kind of the old ways. So that is a great starting point. And so we're coming back as we want to at the moment. So also, of course, there's certain teams that are required to be in there more often for various reasons. But in general, so for myself, I have determined personally, I'm struggling with a lot of people at the moment, trying to figure out how socializing with many people, not with the screen in the middle, actually looks like.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of stimulation. I'm energy drained when I come back from the office. So I make it a point for 1 day a week, which is kind of our more meeting-free day of the week, to bring people in, do some fun brainstorm exercises, etc., and just learn how to socialize again, which actually gives me energy for the entire week, and also my the colleagues that I see on that day, which is great. And also understand how I feel about being back in the office.
Yeah.
And that kind of brings me to the second one. We can take them apart as you wish, but the second point very much is, I think, the company and whoever is behind these plans, whether it's a HR department or or every organization lead, I think they want to get that feedback on what we need from an office space. Because let's be honest, we've not just substituted with being at home, we've created completely different work environments.
Yeah.
They are actually very efficient at times. They all of a sudden, even though 2 years ago we would have never thought we could deal with our dogs running in the pictures and doing our laundry, because it's right there, you might as well.
Right.
Or having to make our own lunch every day. And all of a sudden we've done all of this. We know how we do it, we know what we do, and it's all within the same space, rather than running around in our campus in San Jose, where we have 5 different buildings at times, and it takes 5 minutes to get from one meeting to another.
Yeah.
So we may not want to come back to the office for the exact same reasons we did before. And I'm so glad that we're allowed to figure that out for ourselves and play with that space and have a few months now to do that.
Can you talk a little about that's? I love everything that you just shared. But I think if someone's listening right now, they may be thinking to themselves, how do I trust my employees to make the decision on their own, right? Do I need to give any direction? Let's just start there. So, I mean, it's amazing that, PayPal just says, hey, like, volunteer, do what you need to do. That says a lot about the culture of PayPal, right? The level of trust that is in PayPal, the level of connection that people who work at PayPal have with the culture, their managers, et cetera. So can you just kind of talk about just the nucleus of that?
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
and I'm glad you're asking a question, John. And I know you get these things, but it's not talked about enough. There's, a lot of approach. You can ask people, what do you want? In a survey or whatever, how often do you want to go back to the office, etc. And people will try their hardest to give, share their thoughts. But I think where there might be disconnects, and I think that's where we need to have those conversations. So our organizational leads are now defining how they want to operate with their teams. How often do they want to see them on site? Also just to have that, community feel and that connection, the direct connection, versus how often do you need people to be in there to actually work together face to face. But in the meantime, we have to have the conversations with our colleagues as to how are they working through that process of defining what they want.
Right.
That is kind of that missing piece, I think, often where, we talked just earlier, Maria, how often do you go into the office? You ask me. And I'm like, well, today I'll do once. And in the future, I have, a summer intern waiting to come to PayPal. She asks me this question every week because she has to make decisions based on how often we go back to the office. And I keep saying to her, listen, I can't tell you that. I have maybe 2 times. I can't tell you that. But let's change the conversation around saying, what do you think you want to get from the office? What are the things you want from it? And that, what connections do you want to make? What kind of work you think you can drive with having people around? What kind of elements do you want to build in that are random? I'm always about randomness and innovation, of course. For me, walking the campus is always about coming across random incidences, random conversations, meeting people I didn't expect there. For me, in innovation, it's very important to keep that open. But every team has a different need. So I do think it's way beyond the surveys. You need to have the conversations so people know even how to work through this for themselves to come to a conclusion.
Yeah.
And of course, go to the office and explore the space.
Yeah.
They will feel different and be different.
Yeah, I love that. Let's kind of go to the next layer of that, which I think I saw this as a business coach when the pandemic hit. I was going into a lot of companies and doing virtual workshops and group trainings for groups of small, medium, and large groups to talk about how to structure themselves, right? Because in an office environment, it's much more built-in structure. And when you're at home, you really have, when you're working from home, you really have to be more self-accountable to structure yourself. And I think it's something that people have I have found that people have a difficult time with it, and they need that mentorship to just not micromanage them, but just help structure them. So how can you talk a little bit about that? Are you seeing that, or what are you seeing, and how are you guys dealing with that?
I feel like I always see this in general. I think the one thing we're not overly great at, there's too much going on, number one, too many things were being pulled in, whether that is going into the office, that's a whole added, another added layer that we now have to deal with. But I feel even often people are so overwhelmed with choice. It's the usual paradox of choice.
Yeah, that's so well put. Yeah.
Overwhelming. And again, then you have to tell people certain things that you don't know for certain. Will I be back in the office? What can I deliver on? What's going on? So I always find structure for sure. And it sounds weird because when I work with my volunteering teams, I always encourage them to just do things differently. Even the way our volunteering teams that, work on like prototypes or whatever they cook up.
Right.
I always tell them you do not have to operate in the exact same way that we would operate in PayPal. It's kind of also a test of how people feel comfortable in a team environment, how they take on different roles. And whenever we don't set at least some kind of structure, we're churning and we cannot figure out how we are getting stuck in the smallest of things.
Yeah.
Or we have a big vision we actually want to deliver on. So structure, oddly, is not the death of innovation. It's not the death of creativity. It actually helps you create some healthy boundaries to remove
Yeah.
some voices. And most of the time, people don't like being in a structure anyway, or being in a box at all times. They will start, those new ideas will start creeping in, those
Yeah.
new ways of how they eventually want to work. Because I
Yeah.
can tell you, if you're told you have to be in the office 4 days a week, people will have an opinion on that.
Mm-hmm.
Why not? Why yes? So any structure I think helps. So I completely agree, and I'm not surprised that people were asking for that. Although I'm
Yeah.
glad they're asking for it. Often we're not even asking for it.
Yeah. It's interesting. When the pandemic hit, the idea, the conversation of going back to the office was, everything was fear based, right? Going back to the office and fear. It seems to me that the majority of that conversation has moved now, as we're talking about, to convenience and to freedom, right? People have gotten a taste of wanting to not have an hour commute and be home with their family at a certain time and have dinner, make dinner. There's almost like a shift in prioritizing personal values differently than, I hate almost saying like pre-pandemic, but pre-pandemic. And so how's the culture outside of work hours at PayPal? Are you seeing that as well within the walls, within your
Definitely.
team?
First of all, I mean, it's good that you're mentioning fear, by the way. It completely, often we don't really realize how fear-driven we are in so many aspects. So what I love to see now is that willpower coming through of like, no, no,
Mhm.
no, I actually demand, I want this. This is not a bad thing at all. All of a sudden we can start forming opinions, and we can have that informed conversation. And absolutely, finally we have people, and not everyone's there yet. People are just too good, too nice, too willing to help. But in the beginning, there were some individuals who were very rigorous in saying, I actually am going for a walk every day at this time for an hour. I'm going to
Yeah,
pick up my kids because I never was able to do that before.
yeah,
I'm going to do that. And there's always like, can I block my calendar, can I not block my calendar?
right,
Now there's kind of not even a question anymore for a lot of people. They just
right,
do as they do. And I mean, in fairness, it is very weird when you see, I work a lot with my Indian colleagues who are up God knows what hour in a day, but basically what they're telling me is like, I love just having my morning off, doing my own things, doing sports. I'm okay with working those hours. So I have to be, it's like, Maria, you're in San Jose, you have to be
right.
okay with this. Yeah, I'm okay, I'm just looking out for you if you're
Yeah,
working there at 11 p.m. It's not something that PayPal asks for or dictates, but basically what can be done is all of a sudden you can make it work for yourself. And
yeah,
some people are night owls, apparently. So
yeah. I love it. It's almost like people, when you give people the freedom and you trust them, then they figure out, with some guidance if needed, how to take care of themselves, find the cadence that works for them, when they need to recalibrate, so they can bring what everybody wants to do, bring their best selves with their highest potential, to the day, to work. Yeah, I
and I'm
love it.
And I'm grateful as well, John. So there's also the one thing, because you mentioned before, the trust in employees. I think initially it was like everyone was sitting there during their working hours, actually making sure they always answer their Slack or their Teams
Right.
messages instantly just to indicate presence. And now it's more like all I have to know is when a person has a weekend, Israelis have a different weekend, or when someone's on PTO, that's all I need to know. If someone doesn't get back for a longer period of time, that's what I need to be aware of. Otherwise, I know they will respond when they can in their own time, because they have
Yeah.
different working schedules now or different priorities. There's no more, I don't feel that anyway. And some things might be slightly more delayed, but at least you
Yeah.
can tell, okay, that person did it when they were ready to do that, and
Yeah.
you can trust them that they worked in between that time.
Yeah. Well, I love hearing that, because that tells me, we're talking about a lot of things. One thing being innovative in your thoughts. There's this article. There was an article that was written in 2008 in the Atlantic, and it was titled, "Is Google Making Us Stupid?" And what it was talking about was how, basically, with technology today, it is shifting the delayed gratification to instant gratification, and how challenging that is. And this was written in 2008. And now we're sitting here, it's 2022. But what I like about what you're saying is it's shifting the culture and the nervous system where everything doesn't necessarily always have to be so instant, and rewiring people to be okay with a little bit of delay, understanding that the team has urgency, but other things that are important in the buckets of their personal career and family lives.
I love how you're framing that. I really do.
Yeah.
And incidentally, actually, we talked a lot. I have to share this because he's such a great guy. So we had Marshall Goldsmith
Oh,
in
I love Marshall. Yeah,
I
he's so
know, in
great.
our
Yeah.
author series on Monday. Oh my God, what a larger than life and such a humble and kind person as well. And he introduced us to The Earned Life, which is his most recent book out of the many books he wrote. And the one thing we talked about was that delayed and instant gratification, what that means in the workplace, etc. And I love how you're framing that, and we'll take that away as well on top of the conversation and share that with our community, because it's so true. I mean, in some so for technology, it was always about instant gratification. For career goals, it always seems to be delayed. I do this step, and then I do the next step, and then I get greater and better here. There has to be something in between. And you're right, maybe we've started learning that a bit more with prioritizing our personal needs and integrated the work life finally a bit more into our actual lives. Yeah.
But I think also, I think, through COVID, we saw, I don't think there isn't, I would venture to say that there are not many people that did not know someone, whether it was close to them or, within an arm's reach, that died during COVID, during that time. One of my father's best friends passed away. He was one of the very first people. And you start hearing all these stories about people who are affected, and you realize, well, life is short. Like, we have to, we don't want to look back. There's all of these articles always written, what did this 100-year-old person write? And one of them is always like, I looked back and I didn't say to myself, I wish I spent more time at the office, And so, but having that balance, I have found that I'm doing things now. I'm actually going to be 50 in a couple Sunday. I'm going to be 50. Yeah.
No way, Jon.
But I find myself doing things that I 10 years ago thought I would do in my 60s, and I'm doing them now because of just how the shift is. Let's talk. So I love what you had to say too. Let's talk about this for a second. How do you, as a manager, right? Because this is what we're talking about, is really innovative thinking right now. Innovative, trusting on a higher frequency and vibration, being in alignment with your team and respecting their family time, their personal time, and still kind of coming together and meeting deadlines and having urgency, and right. So there's that piece of it. So how do you manage this, right? What is a manager doing at PayPal today differently than they did to make sure that you're hitting your deadlines, right? I hate to ruin the buzz of what we're talking about, but it is business, and there are deadlines. And so someone could listen to this and say, that's all great, but what about urgency and deadlines? So where do you layer in the consciousness with the capitalism?
Yeah. And we're, I think, business. I mean, at the end of
Correct.
the day,
Right. We are talking about business. Right.
What we're here for. Yeah. Listen, the one thing I always said, because personally, I always feel like if I needed, maybe just needed some others as well. So very early on, many years ago, when I was managing a very small team, and it was so intense. Like, it was when I was in my regulatory compliance days, there were asks coming left, right, and center, always understaffed. Whatever you did, the business just outgrew us exponentially. There was always so much going on. And the one thing that I always said is, I want everyone to show up at their best. And there is days when that is not the case, because people are always so worried about the 1 hour they lose in a day, or like a day maybe sometimes that they cannot perform to the utmost. And they're trying to make up for it and maybe actually make it worse. So your productivity actually declines even more. And it might also go throughout the whole week, rather than just if you would have just let it go for that half day or whatever. I'm not saying, I gave people time off all the time. That is not the point. But what I said to people, and I don't need to know what people do in their personal lives unless they want to share it. That's totally fine. But if we all have a bad night's sleep here and there, like at a minimum, this just happens, but it actually, you feel horrible the entire day, and you just feel like, I need to do X, I need to do Y, Z. People put pressure on you to do stuff. And I always operated based on I want you to do what's good for you. Number one, I need you to do this for me because then I know when you do show up, you can actually afford, so you're actually way more productive to begin with. And then also in cases where, I had someone who couldn't, they really were very sick or they had a very personal issue or whatever, I was operated like the team, like in basketball. What if you have someone who you only have 5 people on the court, you only have 5 people, one is injured and just, should be on crutches, could actually not run.
Right.
Everyone else has to make up for that. And this is just at a point in time, the person is going to heal, will be back on the basketball court to do this. That's how we operate it. Obviously, if someone is always underperforming and taking advantage of that, whole different conversation.
That's different. Yeah.
And it works because we're all coming into it. Also, what's beautiful about it is you're not just so narrowed down on your own tasks. You actually always can. It's like a mini rotation at times where you just fill in. And in COVID times, I emphasized that even more. And miraculously, you might say, we actually made all our timelines. Or sometimes actually a decision was made very consciously to show that people couldn't do it, that we were delaying it, but for the right reasons. And it wasn't like an excuse. It was just like, I know that we might delay this for a week, but we're better off in the long run because people can come back and can be productive. And but mind you, also work a lot with volunteers anyway. That is another added layer where, there's so much going on. Can they even volunteer?
Yeah.
It's just giving people, that is the flexibility people do need. It's also something you have to hammer into their heads because it's not how we usually operate.
Right.
Like you sign up to something, you have to show up for it. But I don't mind if someone signs up for it and said, today I cannot show up 100%. How can we navigate that? Who can help out? And it builds team dynamics. It's a lot more fun. It feels like you're one for all and all for one kind of thing. And
I love what you're talking about, because what you're talking about is the evolved definition of support and collaboration, and really lifting people up. I mean, this is based on the assumption, like you said, you have all the right people who aren't taking advantage, right? Because that's a different discussion. But if you have the right people and you're supportive and you collaborate and you can adapt quickly, then everybody wins in the long run. Because I love your example of everybody has a bad night's sleep every once in a while. The old saying, man plans, God laughs, right? Like things just happen or life gets in the way. It's, you never know. I remember as you're talking about this, I was waiting on an editor of mine to edit a couple things, and I'm pretty ahead of schedule. So I wasn't, she said to me, I'll get back to you. I can get this all to you. I think it was like in 2 weeks. So 2 weeks went by, 3 weeks went by, and usually it was, out of character. So I reached out and I said, hey, where, I emailed where, what, can you give me like just an updated ETA? And she said, oh my God, I totally forgot about it. And this and the other, she called me, I'm so sorry. And this and the other, I said, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. Like tell me. She's like, I need like a week I was like, take a week, take 2 weeks. What I need you, if you're editing for me, I need you in a great space to do it. So don't stress, just get it to me in a week or two, whatever works for you. And I ended up getting it later that night. And I think it was because, and I'm not patting myself on the back, I didn't infuse any more stress or pressure to them. So they could, and I think that's a big piece of an equation that I'm just piggybacking off of what you're saying. When you stress people out, they can't come to be they can't be their best selves.
Yeah, it's actually you're deteriorating the situation more than anything
Correct.
else. Actually, what you alluded to, and it's a wonderful example, you're completely right. I would see it exactly the same way, that a person felt all of a sudden like pressure levels down, Jon is okay with me, and actually now I'll get into it. And, I know we talk about this so much, and it's, like beating a dead horse kind of thing, but I believe that allowing this is where the safe space conversation can start.
Correct.
Only then can you actually start having that conversation, because I can tell people a million times a day, tell me when tell me how you are, tell me when you're not doing well.
Right.
I think when you first of all have it on the radar, you call on people saying, what's going on? Are you okay? Like, what's on your plate, etc. And then people feeling a bit more empowered, and step by step they have the trust to actually feel safe in sharing things, and in also, so you don't have to check in anymore
Yeah.
also. And you can rely on them, and we will slice and dice as needed. I think you can't create that without building the trust. You can't create that without extending,
Yeah.
give people the olive branch that they deserve.
Yeah. I love it. And everything we're talking about is so simple, it's complicated. I mean, it requires people to respond, not react, study the craft of human, just interaction, effective communication. I think all of us, I find myself always studying how to communicate more effectively, and just paying attention to what's working for other people, whether it's mentors, my own coaches, books, etc., listening to things as you're speaking and saying, oh yeah, that's a great thing to kind of put into my world. So it takes a lot of work, from to reinvent yourself, right? To innovate yourself.
A huge amount of work. And I know we all say we don't have time for this, but we all have little chats with ourselves, whether it's building ourselves up and also putting ourselves down a lot more, unfortunately. But for example, Marshall said this on Monday, and it's funny because it was actually very time sensitive for me as well. There were a lot of things that are going on, as in any company. We're ending kind of H1, so we're getting very excited about that. Loads of stuff happening. It's always kind of it's very cyclical. It's always the same in a way, and his philosophy and mantra, and I just love it. It's so simple. It's so straightforward, and that's also often how I talk to myself. It's like, let it go, just let it go. And it sounds ridiculous, I know that, but very often I have the conversation, I have to sit myself down,
right,
and go through things, and then whatever the message I want to share with myself, it's whether it's let it go or stand up, or whatever the case may be. That is the work that you do with yourself, and I'm not sure it takes that much time. I think it just takes, and I know you're all about this as well, just in the moment you have to be present.
Yeah, consciousness.
Yeah.
I had a therapist that I used to go to, and one of the things they would always say is, when that voice is like just so loud, just say out loud, shh. So I find myself doing this, and I'm like, it almost like kind of gets you back to center, and gets, kind of talking, gets the voice, to lower down a bit. So
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Or like I like to do it. I always have a favorite song of the week or of the day. Half the time I don't even know which ones they are. I just heard them randomly somewhere, and I just play the song. I'm actually calling it quits on the noise, and play that song in my mind, and then allow myself to. Sometimes you have to tell yourself to.
Yeah, you got it. I got a song for you, Chris Stapleton. Do you like Chris Stapleton? He's a country singer. The song is called "Cold." You'll love it.
Oh, brilliant.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing. You'll love it.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Always up for.
So this was great. I love this talk. I think it's so relevant. It's real time. It gives people very important things to think about. And I think people are really, they're constantly trying to figure out, the answers to these questions that fit for them. I want to go back to one thing you said earlier as we kind of come to an end. You were talking about brainstorming sessions, right? And so how important are brainstorming sessions in the creation of what you're building? Because I want, as people are listening, whether they're, small, medium, large size companies, how important are the brainstorming sessions to get ideas from other people?
Hugely. I mean, I know it's the good old cliche, isn't it? Innovation brainstorm, that's all you do. But it is the first start to get anywhere. So I call it the beginning of the idea journey. I actually have a brainstorming session I call Idea Factory. All I'm asking people to do is come here and tell me what you're thinking about at this specific moment in time. We have a very diverse group that always shows up, different countries, different backgrounds, all sorts, which is amazing. And first of all, you realize how many people are thinking about the same things, the same problems, have the same worries. Brilliant. And then also, while we're having these conversations, while people are sharing amongst each other, it's kind of like a therapy / brainstorm session in the way. people hear new things, and all of a sudden they come back to me weeks later saying, I heard this one thing here, and then I started actually asking the question somewhere else, and then I got more inspiration. This is how you start that process, where you cross-pollinate, where you just put this little bug in people's heads and just let them go with it. It is crucial. How you call it, how you set it up is up to you. I know brainstorming is not that sexy anymore, but it is the first breeding ground to give people different influences. That's a way that they can seek difference if they don't know how to start to begin with. And of course, there's more elaborate ones for patenting if you want to do that. Of course, there is. But I think just to start that journey for people, it's essential.
It's a game changer. I love it. I love it. Maria, this has been great. I always love my conversations with you, and I always learn so much. It's so enlightening and filled with wisdom and ideas and just things to continually think about. In closing, finish this sentence. One thing everybody needs to do to personally be more innovative is?
Personally be more innovative is just do you know when you're like, that would be nice, just do that. Just do it. And I say this to myself as well, because I have so many things that I'm like, wouldn't that be nice? And then the more often you tell yourself, wouldn't it be nice, that's the thing you should do. In a small, teeny tiny small way, because if you don't do, you will just never come around to it.
I love it. I love it. You are always full of knowledge. I appreciate all your time. I know you've been on the show a lot, and I always love talking with you. And thank you so much. Think Community, PayPal is an incredibly innovative company. What I love about everybody that I've met at PayPal is everyone is so approachable. Everybody has such humility. And so it's no surprise to me that it is growing and has grown to the extent that it has, because there is a through line of kindness of everybody in your organization that I've been in contact with. And not to mention, there isn't anything I do that isn't 99% PayPal and or Amazon. So I run my I'm a business coach, is mostly one-on-one, but my online coaching programs are all run all through PayPal, and PayPal is the best. So I love the product and I love the people. So thank you so much. Think Community, as you are asking yourselves these questions about your own business, your own back to work, your own culture, your own brainstorming sessions, and connecting with the people that you need to be connecting with, and knowing what they're thinking and how they can make a difference in your organization. Don't forget about your people, and make sure you're listening, because they will tell you everything you want to know, and all you got to do is ask. Maria, thank you a ton. Think Community, thanks everybody. Have a great day. Maria, anything in closing?
No, just go out and do, and like you said, do and listen, good balance, and tell yourself just to.
I love it. All right. Thanks everybody.